What's going on, ladies and gentlemen? Christian Hana Horror here today, and today I want to talk to you guys about Friday the 13th, Part 6, Jason Lives. So the title of this video was, is Friday the 13th, Part 6, Jason Lives the best Friday the 13th sequel, or something like that? And the reason I wanted to title the video that is because I have a story I want to tell about this movie, and of course my videos are always fun because I love to get your thoughts in the comment section below, especially when we talk about the franchise like Friday the 13th. I have been vocal with friends close to me and other people like Baldy Jack, who's one of my biggest Friday the 13th buddies, about Friday the 13th Part 6. Now, open disclosure, I love each and every entry in this franchise. Friday the 13th is my second favorite, or the one-up franchise to Nightmare on Elm Street, which is my #1 favorite. But I love each and every individual Friday the 13th for their own reasons, and Part 6, I find myself complaining about that and having it lower on my lists for rankings. The last one I did a couple years ago, I watched it and I was like, wow, I was kind of rough on Friday the 13th Part 6. And, you know, I talk about my issues with the movie, and I guess I had some revelations. I had some time to reflect on the things I've said about the movie, and we're going to get into that. Now, when I started getting into horror movies in general, Friday the 13th was one of the first franchises I dove into to watch and experience. And I watched the franchise in order from 1 to the remake. My initial reaction of Jason Lives was really good. And I started to fall in love with individual movies for their own reasons over time, rewatching the movies multiple times. And I found myself complaining about certain things with Friday the 13th Part 6 Jason Lives over the last couple of months. Things like the tone of the film. Now, I really love the tone of, say, the first Friday the 13th, which is a dark, foreboding horror movie with good characters, and movies like the second one or the fourth one, which has a great tone. Funny characters, but the tone of everything with Jason is really dark and evil. And when I would talk about Part 6 over the last recent years, I would say things like, it's a lighter shade of gray in terms of some of the kills that Jason does is silly and funny, and the characters are bubbly, which is fine, but there's children in the movie. It's a very unique Friday the 13th, to say the least. I think we can all agree about that. Friday the 13th Part 6 cannot be mistaken for any other Friday the 13th in its tone and in its look. And one of my biggest gripes with Friday the 13th Part 6 was the gloves that Jason wears in the movie. I used to say, why is Jason wearing garden gloves? Why is he wearing that? It throws me off. I don't like it, etc., etc. And as time has gone on, I have not watched Part 6 often. As a matter of fact, it's probably been a couple years since I'd actually gone back and really just dove into Part 6 on its own, as opposed to doing like a big marathon, watching all of them, because there's a difference from doing something like that than to just dive into a particular entry where you can really just have all your focus on that film. And I noticed when I watched Friday the 13th Part 6 this last time, I was having some revelations with the things I was saying about the film and the way I was acting towards the film. Now, one of the things I would always say about Friday the 13th Part 6, as I said, was the gloves and things like that. I told myself, wait a minute. Found myself kind of slapping my wrist in a sense, because I would say to myself, Christian, why don't you get on Jason Takes Manhattan, where Kane Hodder has a clean finger with a decorpsed body, and it makes no sense. And I would just kind of let that go. And I found myself realizing maybe I'm just being too stiff. Maybe I am being ridiculous, because I can find contradictory things that I complain about with Part 6 in other films. Now, as you can tell, what I mean is I love Jason Takes Manhattan, but I'll never tell you it is the most well-made horror movie. And the irony is, Part 6, I think, is an extremely well-made horror movie. And after this previous watching a few days ago, I realized I was kind of wrong, I think. Friday the 13th Part 6, I think, is one of the best Friday the 13th entries. There are things about the movie that are so close to me that I realized, Christian, why don't you just say you love this movie now? I'm a big Alice Cooper fan. That theme of The Man Behind the Mask, I think, is one of the greatest songs from a horror movie ever, which I'll be doing a video about that very soon. Tom Matthews, I'm a Return of the Living Dead nut, and I realized I love him in this movie. I think he's my favorite Tommy Jarvis. His performance is great. And I realized Tom Matthews was perfect because even though Return of the Living Dead is a different movie, I do find them being on the same level of that shade of gray, a little bit lighter with serious situations going on. And I think that's why Tom Matthews is so perfect for Part 6 and why I now love Part 6 for that reason. Some of these things are just starting to kind of come in waves and hit me with the realization of this film. And the garden gloves thing, I think, is silly for me to complain about. And I just wanted to make this video to just kind of document how I am as a horror fan. I have no problem saying, you know what, maybe I need to reevaluate something, or maybe I need to relook at this and say, maybe I'm just not right about this. Now, granted, this is still my opinion saying that, you know what, I really love Friday the 13th Part 6, Jason Lives now. And if I had to rank it, I would say this. My number 1, the final chapter. My number 2, Friday the 13th, Part 1. My number 3, Jason Lives. I really love this movie now, and things can change with other movies with me in the future. But I really wanted to document this day to say I kind of was being silly and complaining about things with this movie that I think I had no reason to be complaining about. Tom McClellan came in and did a great job with this movie. Friday the 13th Part 5 happening was the catalyst for this movie to happen. And you know what? I think if Roy Burns ever ran into that Jason Voorhees, Roy Burns would be out pretty quick. But in all seriousness, the way that this franchise went, it really is remarkable when you think about it. Because to go back and basically try to erase a Part 5 and bring Jason back, when you think about it, pretend the movies hadn't happened yet. It seems risky. Do you think people would want to go see that again, or do you think they've moved on? The only way to know for sure was to not only make a Friday the 13th film, but I think is to make a really good Friday the 13th film. And the way movies were changing, and to the middle of the 80s, things were changing. Tones were changing as opposed to the early 80s. And I think Friday the 13th Part 6 nails it on the head. So my question to you is Friday the 13th Part 6 one of the best sequels? Let me know in the comments section below. Let me know your thoughts on not only Friday the 13th Part 6, but any other Friday the 13th movie that you may have changed your mind on over the last couple of years, or at all. This is Christian Hana Horror saying I approve Friday the 13th Part 6 now, and it's one of my favorite Friday the 13ths. Thank you guys for watching this video. We'll see you next time.